Barber. It is Monday, July 26th, 2021. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to say a few things about how we'll conduct this meeting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to participate in this meeting by phone or other electronic means, and this transportation committee will be conducted under Minnesota statute section or under Minnesota statute section 13D.021. Before we start the meeting, we need to establish whether there's a quorum. With that, Becky, can you call the roll?
Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings. Ferguson.
Here.
Fredson.
Here.
Gonzalez. Sterner.
Here.
Zirin. Zirin. I can see him on. Barber.
Here.
Oh, I got you there.
We got you. Thank you very much. So seeing a quorum present, I call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee meeting for July 26, 2021. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, seeing and hearing none, we can move on to approval of the minutes, and it's the minutes for the July 12th, 2021 Transportation Committee meeting. Did anyone have changes or additions to the minutes? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Sterner. I'd motion to approve the minutes.
Moved by Sterner, is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Seconded by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings. Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin. Barber.
Aye. With that, the minutes are approved. And we are on to our tab report. It's the report from July 21st, and we have Peter DeGan here to present. Peter, you might be on mute.
You'd think by now I would have, never mind. It's only been 16 months of Zoom and WebEx meetings. All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. And thank you for that reminder. Madam Vice Chair, honorable members of the committee, General Manager Koistra, I believe Assistant Director, Acting Director Benowitz is going to be on, and Becky and Jenna, thank you for what you do behind the scenes. It was a long tab meeting, approximately, well over 3.5 hours, and I will summarize it as quickly and as briefly as I possibly can. From MnDOT, some good news. They received $200 million for the Corridors of Commerce program and $100 million each for state highway and general highways. Metropolitan Council, MnDOT announced received $20 million from the COVID package, and MnDOT got 55. And the I-494 project from 169 to the airport received a grant of $60 million from the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America program. MPCA, to answer the question about the reliability of charging stations, which has come up quite a bit, the MPCA reported that charging stations, funded with VW money, they must have a 5-year service agreement. They must maintain a 95% uptime, repair the station within 24 hours of a report, and fully operational within 48 hours. From the MAC, continuing good news, 69% average daily departures over this time last year, and that's up to 420. Delta's going back to Paris. There'll be 189 active routes, including 180 domestic, 9 international in the month, in July and August. And Terminal 1, Terminal 2 have pop-up vaccines. and also the Blue Ram has the COVID testing station. The principal, well, actually, the principal part of the meeting was on the regional solicitation, but prior to that, and I know many of you were able to watch Charles Small and Maurice Henderson speak, introduced by Chair Hovland and also the Met Council Chair Zelli. Just briefly, I will, and Becky, I'm sure Becky knows this, but the presentation from Mr. Small and Mr. Henderson starts at 39 minutes and it ends at an hour and 26 minutes if you would like to watch it on the YouTube presentation of the meetings. Mr. Small is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Transportation Department, Intergovernmental Affairs. His remarks were directed towards sustainability, equity, and innovation in transportation needs, and how to localize the spending and effectiveness of the infrastructure program that President Biden is pushing forward. Mr. Henderson was appointed by the Biden administration as a senior policy advisor to the Secretary Buttigieg. His talk was primarily on building back better and framing up President Biden's infrastructure plan, and also the need to be restorative and proactive in this program. The main part of the tab part of the meeting, I should say, was to promote discussion in July, this meeting, and then have decisions ready in September on a couple of categories. The first one is, and I'll bring these to your attention with some comments. The first one was modal funding. And in 2020, you may recall, transit was increased by $5 million, the midpoint. And it's really the midpoint that affects funding. It's not the maximum minimum, but it's the midpoint that determines the funding between roadways, bike ped, and transit. The technical committees did not recommend any changes, so that will go forward. The modal funding will stay as it is. In the application categories and purpose statements, that too will go ahead as it is, no changes. In 2 cycles, though, well, let me step back, please. Right now, the purpose statement, okay, why are we doing this, is based upon the criteria and scoring. In 2 cycles, that will reverse, and it will be the purpose statement first of what we're doing or why we're doing it, and then the application comes and the criteria and scoring. So the application category and minimum maximum awards, again, was voted, not voted, but the overwhelming majority was to recommend no change, as did the technical committees. However, many TAB members pushed for expansion of roadways to new suburban communities. The bridge target of 10 million will be left the same. The ABRT 25 million, BRT 7 million for a total of 32 will be left the same. And the new market guarantees, again, primarily for suburban communities. And in the bridge category, Commissioner Guttel of Hennepin County pointed out that much of that money will be used for repair, not new bridges. The most discussion came up on what is called criteria weighting. And the recommendation here was in the new category of spot mobility. And spot mobility, as you know, is at grade intersections such as turn lanes, roundabouts, traffic signals, and they have had an impact, or they can have a detrimental impact on pedestrian safety. And we have seen an alarming rise in fatalities both in the metro and the state. And the thought was to give spot mobility increased percentage of weighting, the spot mobility category, and decrease congestion. There was also a comment or a suggestion to perhaps take points away from role in the regional system. And this was undecided. Chair Hovland said he would like some more options from staff in the August meeting, but he gets a strong sense of the need for safety. And that certainly was overwhelming, but not at the expense of air quality. The next was the strategic capacity, and that is primarily roadways. And the award from the policy work group of last 2 summers ago, the expansion category was raised to 10 million from 7 million. And the two opposing points of view on this were many members had concerns over climate, that expanding roadways or the strategic capacity for roadways would continue to would cause climate disruption. Many of the suburban, or I should say the suburban county members, Dakota, Scott, Carver, and Hennepin, Maple Grove, Maple Grove being in Hennepin, really pushed and noted the need for expansion, either of transit or roadways in their communities due to the growth. One of your members, Commissioner one of the Dakota County Commissioners, Commissioner Holberg, also linked the expansion to your council's density requirements. But for the transit advocates, we are getting money returned from the regional solicitation that could not be used, and that is going to go towards transit. And then, if I may go back just as a historic viewpoint, the minimum and maximum awards for any project are based upon, the federal minimum award is based upon a limit to ensure that a local partner does not take on a project too large that the federal process, for the federal process is burdensome. And then the maximum award is to ensure a larger number of projects are done by not one project not getting all of the money. This is not typically the way it's done differently in other MPOs. And the Chair Hubbard also wants to bring back the modal funding to address climate, a larger discussion on climate. And as I said earlier, really the only way to affect funding is the midpoints of the modal funding. In other words, you take from one, you give to another, and you cause more emphasis or focus in that area. And lastly, the unique projects, and I will not repeat what Cole Hiniger said to you or presented to you in your July 12th Transportation Committee meeting. As you know, in quick review, 4.5 million or 2.5% is off the top for this. And the big keys here that the eligibility is going to be determined by the applicant versus the standard before of the project was not eligible in any other category. And there'll be a 2-step application process to promote flexibility. The first will be an informal soliciting of ideas. Does it qualify under federal guidelines? And then the second will be a full application. And where this is going to be unique, no pun intended, is that because the technical committees see this and staff see this as a qualitative review or scoring, the members of the unique projects work group will be doing the actual scoring. And this was not in part of Cole's presentation to you on July the 12th because it was not available, but in the survey at the final policy work unique project work group meeting, innovation was ranked the highest, and that received 28% of the vote, if you will. And that refers to new approaches or dealing with emerging challenges. The second was environmental, and that received 21%. And that is to address air quality and climate improvements. The third, at 19%, was equity. And that is to use innovation to address the barriers and the quality of life for the BIPOC communities. At 13% was multimodal, at 11% was regional impact and expandability, and at 9% was partnerships and collaboration. And lastly, under the category of rules for the unique projects, There is no limit on the maximum because it's only a $4.5 million category, and the minimum is $500,000 to assure cost effectiveness of the federal requirements. And then, of course, there'll always be a local match. Thank you for your patience in listening. I hope I summarized it enough for you. If you have any questions, please let me know, or please feel free to ask. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dugan. I,
Yes, ma'am.
could you provide me some of that detail on the explanation for the criteria, like, what were some of the emerging challenges? And I also wanted to know what some of the emerging challenges were. And you may not have the answer now, but if you could maybe elaborate that
Yes, okay.
later.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. As of right now, that has not been defined. It is, the innovation was, under its bullet points, was new approaches, new solutions, and what about emerging challenges? But they have not been further defined, but they will be, absolutely. And we will make sure that that is addressed to you. Thank you.
And Councilmember Chambliss, one of the things that both Councilmember Fredson and I served on the Unique Projects Board, and what we have, I've had staff, we've put together a proposal of where innovation is ranked highest, but then where reducing adverse environmental impacts and improving racial equity are equal, because I think really that's the sentiment of the group. And so then the rest of the criteria kind of coming out from that, but we want to get that to that group that's defining how things are going to be scored. So we can have our opinion reflected in that too.
And Madam Chair, once that is finished, then it will come to the Transportation Committee, I presume, your committee, and Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions for Peter? All right.
Thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you very much, and thank you for the good summary. Now we're on to reports. We have MTS. We have for that today, we have Jerry Sutton joining us to give the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of additional comments to make regarding the visit by US DOT policy staff, Maurice Henderson and Charles Small. The US DOT staff spoke about initiatives being advanced at the federal level, including new restorative grant programs for projects like the potential Rondo lid over I-94. And they also spoke about potential federal funding increases that, if passed, would be the largest one-time infusion of funding for both transit and rail. And that is all I have to report on today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Jerry from the committee? All right, don't see any. Thank you, Jerry. On to Metro Transit General Manager Quistra.
Madam Chair, I'll keep my report brief as well. First, in terms of monitoring COVID, we're continuing to monitor COVID cases among our employees, and we're experiencing a bit of an uptick in COVID cases, as is Minnesota in general. I believe we had 12 COVID cases last month. Our patterns seem to, as one would expect, follow the patterns of the state. Our mobile vaccine buses continue to operate in conjunction with the Minnesota Department of Health, and Metro Transit has continued its partnership with MDH for the bus clinics multiple times per week. It was highlighted in a cover story in the Star Tribune yesterday. The partnership will continue into August, including a day at the Minnesota Farm Fest in Redwood County next week. Buses will also be on site for all 12 days of the state fair near the Northern Events Center. And then since last April, we've had more than 200 vaccine bus clinics held across the state, and more than 6,600 shots have been given. And then finally, I wanted to mention the last Transportation Committee meeting, we presented part one of our Stronger Better initiative with a review of the data and information related to ridership patterns. That was the primary focus of that part of the presentation. We mentioned that part two would be coming today, but we've rescheduled this presentation to occur at the August 9th Transportation Committee meeting prior to the presentation on the preliminary operating budget. We thought it would be a good lead in to to the preliminary operating budget presentation. So that's my update, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for General Manager Questra? All right, thank you, Wes. Now we are on to our consent items. There are 3 items on consent. Oh, pardon me.
Madam Chair, I would just like to offer an apology to Ms. Sutton. Ms. Sutton, I didn't realize she was, Ms. Fenowich was not here and Ms. Sutton was going to do the presentation. Sorry, Jerry.
No worries, just a little vacation transition. So just shows we have a very well-rounded and effective team at MTS, so they can all pinch
Don't
hit.
we? Don't we?
Exactly.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, so now we're on to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on consent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
Spreadson, I'll move the recommendation to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Sterner was second.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All right, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries, and the consent and items are approved. Our first item of business is business item 2021-143, a joint committee item. It is the 2021 second quarter budget amendment. We have Ed Petrie and Heather Augustin-Kiemner here to present.
Good afternoon, Chair. Ed Petrie, Director of Finance, Metro Transit. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. And with me this evening is Heather Augustin-Kiemner from MTS. As usual, I will go through the portion for Metro Transit first. I'll go through the capital portion and the operating portion of the amendment, stand for any questions, and then I will then hand the baton over to Heather and let her go through the MTS items. So, Chair and committee members, we are here to present the second quarter budget amendment for both Metro Transit and for Metropolitan Transportation Services. The item this evening does include both capital items and operating items. So I will go through the first portion for the Metro Transit portion for the capital. Beginning with the capital portion, we first will have one administrative adjustment. This is an administrative adjustment for the D line. Originally with the D line about a year ago, we had put up just over $7 million worth, or $7 million worth of RTC funds waiting for the 2021 CMAQ grant to come in. That CMAQ grant has now been executed. So now we can bring those funds in and then remove this $7 million of RTC encumbrance out of that project. We also have a number of projects that we are now closing this evening or recommending for closure this evening. The funds have been expended and they are ready to close. The majority part of the portion though is I will go through our adjustments to the capital budget for Metro Transit. One of the things, if you want to go by the weight theory, this is a very large amendment for Metro Transit, and the reason this is so large is the fact is that we have applied for all the federal grants for 2021. Those federal grants are now in, so now we are ready to bring the projects forward from the council approved CIP into the capital budget because funding is now available. So this will be the largest amendment for Metro Transit as far as for volume of number of projects during the year. Madam Chair, what I'll do is I'll go through some of the major projects that we're bringing in, kind of summarize a few of them, and then talk about some like one-time projects that we are also bringing in. So some of the major projects, first of all, we are bringing in in 2021, we had planned to bring in $3.4 million of federal and $2.6 million of RTC for the construction of the new Minneapolis bus garage. Those funds are now available. We're bringing them forward. Many other projects that we do have that we're bringing forward this evening include projects under the facility power redundancy generators, hoist replacements at our garages. We have some for the Nicollet garage shop modernization. We have a number of projects for the light rail system to keep the projects in a state of good repair. A number of overhauls that include LRT corrosion mitigation, interlockings, motor brakes, brake systems, door overhauls, and switch upgrades. These are all projects that you have seen in the past that we're using our 5337 state of good repair funds to keep the light rail system in a state of good repair. So we, like I said, we have a handful of those projects coming forward this evening. We have some public facility and facility improvement projects, and we have a garage wash rack replacement. So all of these projects that I've talked about so far are basically normal projects that we had brought through the CIP. These are part of our normal process through our 6-year CIP. We do have some one-time adjustments that I'm recommending this evening. First of all, with the American Rescue Funds, if you recall, the council was a recipient of 3 different lettings of federal funds. We had the CARES money, we had the CRRSA money, the CRRSAA money, and then we had the ARP funds, the American Rescue Funds. With the American Rescue Funds also came some capital dollars that were for New Starts type projects. The Southwest project was a fortunate recipient of $30,552,442 worth of ARP, American Rescue Funds. These funds were meant to come in and to offset the local requirements on a project. They do not increase the scope of a project, but they are meant to provide local relief. So this is $30.5 million of American Rescue Funds that will come into the Southwest project and relieve the Hennepin County contribution an equal amount, $30.5 million. And as I stated, Madam Chair, this does not increase the scope of the project. Also, the Orange Line was also another lucky recipient of ARP money, American Rescue Funds. They received $11,362,644 of ARP money. This will also offset the local contributions. I am working with Charles Carlson on this. We have not identified yet which one of the local contributors, how this will be allocated across. But as I stated once again, this is $11.3 million worth of additional federal funds. It will have an equal offset on the local side and does not increase the scope of the project. Also, the other thing that I'm very happy to announce is with the legislature this past year, the 2021 legislature, we continue to receive their confidence in our BRT projects, our BRT lines. If you recall, the council did receive $57.5 million of state funds for future BRT lines. I'm working with Charles Carlson, and it's recommended to bring $40 million into the E line and $17.5 million into the F line. These funds will be for design, engineering, right-of-way, staff time, vehicles, and construction. So once again, we were very, very pleased that through the legislative session, we were the recipient of $57.5 million of state funds. The majority of the items in the capital portion of the amendment this evening, like I said, all the projects were in our CIP that the council adopted, bringing them forward this evening. So Madam Chair, committee members, at this point, that is my comments on the capital portion of the budget amendment. And Madam Chair, I would stand for any comments or any questions before I move on to the operations for Metro Transit.
Thank you, Ed. Are there questions from council members on the capital part from Metro Transit? All right, not seeing any. Go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair, I will go on to the operating portion for Metro Transit. The operating portion is made up of a couple different items between bus, light rail, and commuter rail. On the bus side, you will recall that periodically Heather and I will bring an amendment forward where we will actually transfer motor vehicle sales tax down to the capital program, bringing in an equal amount of federal dollars back up into operations. So what we're recommending this evening would be a transfer of $10 million of motor vehicle sales tax down to the capital program and an equal amount of $10 million of federal funds to the operating program. As I stated, this is a customary adjustment that we have historically done. It's a dollar for dollar exchange of funds. It has no impact on regional MVEST allocations, no impact on MVEST or operating reserves or on any of our planned projects. It's just for administrative adjustment that we're making for ease of administration of the funds. We're also making an adjustment on bus, light rail, and commuter rail to recognize a salary wage increases for regional administration. When we originally adopted the budget in 2021, did not include wage increases. So this is to now recognize the wage increases for 2021. It's about $800,000 for the allocations come to Metro Transit bus allocations, just over $82,000 for light rail, and $14,000 for commuter rail. Another item I'm recommending in the operating budget this evening is $250,000 in funds that we received from the 2021 legislative session. These are funds for a zero emission electric bus vehicle study and plan. We have to go back to the legislature then in February of 2022. There were some criteria that we had to report back on for this vehicle study and plan. So most of these funds, about $225,000 of these funds will be for a consultant and about $25,000 for staff time while we're putting together the plan. The final item is bringing on 2 procurement specialists in the procurement department at Robert Street that Metro Transit has agreed to pay for. These will be 2 additional procurement specialists that will be 100% dedicated to Metro Transit for an estimated cost of about $252,000. So for that, Madam Chair, I would stand for any questions on the operating piece for the Metro Transit budget.
Thank you. Any questions from council members? All right, I'm not seeing any, so I'll turn it over to Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. So Madam Chair and council members, again, Heather Augustin-Huebner, Finance Director for MTS. We have some routine administrative adjustments in our amendment, and these are just very traditional things of, you know, one bus procurement cost a little more and one cost a little less. So we're just allocating the high level dollar amount you gave for that purchase and just shifting it slightly between projects. But on the capital side, we have 3 major categories of new projects in this amendment. The first item is that we're bringing in RTC in lieu of 5307 federal funds for the suburban transit providers. So when we get our federal funding, we allocate that federal formula funding out by kind of an established formula. And part of the funds earned are for suburban transit providers. What we have been doing historically is we defederalize those projects, and the council keeps the federal money. And then we program an equal amount of RTC for the suburban transit providers. For a number of reasons, it is very administratively beneficial to both the suburban transit providers and the Metropolitan Council to do the transactions that way. So what you'll see is a lump dollar sum allocated to each of the suburban transit providers. And then as they identify specific projects, we pass those funds through to those suburban transit providers in the form of grants. If one of the projects that they submit to us is not eligible for RTC, you will see us do one of these dollar for dollar federal and MVES swaps that Ed just talked about with Metro Transit. The second category that we're bringing in is 2 competitive grants, capital grants for the suburban transit providers. So what happened is these suburban transit providers go out for the grants, either through the FTA or the regional solicitation, and we're bringing, and those projects have been awarded. We're bringing them in at a federal funding level of 80% and a 20% council match. So the total council investments in these projects is just shy of $1 million. Third, we're bringing in federal funds and RTC match for routine bus purchases that are programmed into the CIP. I do want to make one note. There are some dollars programmed for Metro Mobility expansion buses. Now, we're all trying to look in our best crystal ball and see what's happening with ridership. Metro Mobility ridership is coming back, and we do anticipate that we're going to start to see growth. So we also know that we're having some delays in procurements for our buses. So we're going ahead and ordering planned expansion buses now. If for some reason the Metro Mobility ridership expansion does not materialize, we will use these buses as just bus replacement and adjust a future year order. So in addition to that, similar to Metro Transit, we're doing a $55,000 funding swap, dollar for dollar of federal funds and MVEST to pay for engines, transmissions, midlife bus rehabilitations, and suburban transit provider projects that are not eligible to be funded with RTC. On the operating side, we are also slightly increasing our operating budget to account for our increased regional allocation costs. On the pass-through side of our budget, we're bringing in the suburban transit provider of Carissa federal funds. And that's about $9.9 million. Those funds are allocated to the suburban transit providers using the same allocation formula as other 5307 formula funds. Those funds will be passed through to suburban transit providers using grant agreements. This budget amendment demonstrates commitment towards asset preservation and also supports the Thrive outcomes of stewardship by assessing the future needs, responsible planning and management of resources for Metro Transit and metropolitan transportation services. The budget amendment adds funding that reflects strategic investment in regional infrastructure that will promote economic competitiveness and create prosperity for the region. Our requested action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the 21 unified budget as indicated and in accordance with the attached tables. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Heather. Are there any questions on the MTS side? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item number 2021-143 JT.
This is Sterner. I'd make a motion to approve the item.
It's moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Seconded by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Heather and Ed.
Thank you.
Next, we're on to business item 2021-178. It's the Blue Line Enhancements Phase 2A contract. And we have Ryan Heath here to present.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Heath. I'm a project manager with Metro Transit's Engineering and Facilities Department. Today, I'm presenting business item 2021-178 for contract 21P084 Blue Line Enhancements Phase 2A. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the award and execution of contract 21P084 with Railworks Track Systems Incorporated for replacement of track, rail, and upgrades and replacement of signal system components on the Metro Blue Line in an amount not to exceed $15,033,893. Blue Line Enhancements is a phased state of good repair project on the existing Blue Line light rail line. Certain track components on Blue Line are worn and critical signal components are now obsolete. BLE will also upgrade elements such as pedestrian crossing warning devices that do not comply with current industry or council standards. Phase 2A will rehabilitate the portion of Blue Line between MOA Station and BCS Station in Bloomington. An invitation for bid was advertised on May 6, 2021, and there were 42 plan holders. 4 bids were received, and the bids ranged from $15,033,893 to $18,956,700. Railworks Track Systems Incorporated submitted the low responsive responsible bid. The Office of Equal Opportunity reviewed the bid by Railworks and determined they met the DBE goal of 3%. Thus, Railworks is recommended for award. With that, Madam Chair and committee members, I'm open for any questions.
Are there any questions or from council members? All right, I'm seeing and hearing none. I entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-178.
Chambliss moves to approve.
Thank you. Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second. Sterner will second.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Zieren's aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we are on to business item 2021 or -190, which is Metro Purple Line BRT Ramsey County Project Development Capital Grant Agreement. And we have Craig Lamont. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. I've got a pair of items here before you tonight, starting with this item first. Both items were referenced in the July 14th information item presentation I made to Council a couple of weeks ago. This first one is an absolutely critical one for the project as we enter the project into the next phase, the project development phase of the federal program. Specifically looking for your recommendation here tonight to authorize the regional administrator the ability to negotiate and execute a capital grant agreement for the project development phase with Ramsey County and Ramsey County Regional Railroad Authority for the Metro Purple Line project in an amount not to exceed $39.9 million. This funding will advance the project from the current 25% design through approximately 90% design over the course of the next 2 years. It'll pay for agency and consultant staff supporting the project. It'll also pay for the beginning of the right-of-way process, including the purchase of the first few parcels, and then also pay for project management services. The Ramsey County Regional Railroad Authority Board as well as Ramsey County Board are anticipated to take similar actions later in the month of August, approving and committing the funds first and then approving the grant agreement. Be happy to stand for any questions from the body.
Thank you, Craig. Are there any questions from council members? One thing that I have, I think it'd be good if you, and maybe you did this, I was unable to attend your presentation to full council, but the kind of what happens, because at this point we'll be able to enter the New Starts program in 2021, even though there's a longer road ahead as we do that process. But could you explain that just a little bit?
Absolutely, Madam Chair and committee members. So this is actually required for that first step. We need to attach the executed grant agreement to demonstrate to FTA that we have the full funding necessary to carry out the activities of the project development phase over the next 2 years. So that application will go in shortly after this agreement is executed. This item would go to the August 11th full council. So hopefully by late August, we'll be able to make that submittal to FTA. The expectation based off of past precedent is that it'll take about 60 days to turn around and get a response back from FTA. So hopefully in October, we'll have entry into the federal program for the Metro Purple Line.
Thanks, Craig. Any other questions from council members? All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-190.
It's Fredson. I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. It's moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Second by Sterner.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Zieren's aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. The next business item, as Craig mentions, is also for this project. It's business item 2021-191, and it's a cooperation agreement with MnDOT. And turn it back to Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. The second item I have here tonight is a first of a series of agreements with the Minnesota Department of Transportation for their support of the project, committing their agency staff on a full-time and part-time basis for the next 2 years and then beyond. So this first cooperation agreement really just lays out the framework for what MnDOT's role and responsibilities will be on overall project delivery for the project development phase, but also into the subsequent engineering phase and then eventually the construction phase. Coming later on this summer and fall, we'll have a master funding agreement that really speaks to the framework for transfer of funds between the two agencies, and then probably most importantly, sometime after August 11th, we will have the subordinate funding agreement that will speak to specifically the work that MnDOT will be doing for us in 2021. So I'm seeking recommendation on behalf of the project team for authorizing the regional administrator to negotiate and execute the cooperation agreement with MnDOT for the Metro Purple Line project.
Thank you, Craig. Are there any questions from council members? All right, then I entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-191.
Fredson here. I'd move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Seconded by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Next, we're on to business item 2021-192. It's a Southwest LRT 7th Amendment to the Hennepin County and Hennepin County Regional Rail Capital Grant Agreement. We have Jim Alexander. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jim Alexander, Project Director for the Southwest LRT. So this item relates to contingency funding for the project, and a little background is that we are low on contingency. We're sitting right now at about 3% contingency. We started with the FFGA back in 2019 at just under 12%, to give you some perspective. And that 3% is below the acceptable thresholds that we have with the FTA as we work with the Federal Transit Administration. So this relates to the large change orders that we have been bringing forward to the committee and the council recently, primarily related to the Corps Protection and the anticipated change orders that are going to be forthcoming on the Kenilworth Tunnel. But just kind of a summary, the bulk of the change orders that we have been dealing with on this project relate to the Eden Prairie Town Center, adding that station to the project. We had a fairly heavy contingency draw on for the Franklin O&M facility when we awarded that contract for construction, and the Corps Protection barriers part of that. The contaminated soils we had brought forward earlier this summer, and the system storage that we had brought forward. So this item is related to a committed amount from the county that was required by the Federal Transit Administration when we got into the full funding grant agreement back in 2019. And essentially the feds required that the county provide 10% of the overall project budget to be kind of in holding pattern for use for cost overruns, such as what we're foreseeing with the Corps Protection and the Kenilworth Tunnel, and then also the rebaselining that I've spoke to you about. So, Madam Chair, I have before you tonight the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorized the regional administrator to negotiate and execute the 7th Amendment to the capital grant agreement with Hennepin County and Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority to add $200,315,255, bringing the total grant amount to $878,080,704. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Are there any questions from council members? All right, I entertain a motion then to approve business item 2021-192.
Motion to approve by Chambliss.
Moved by Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion?
I just wanted to highlight that even though we have a number, even though we need to increase our contingency base, it's really important to think about the Thrive livability opportunities that we're going to get from the Green Line extension and the regular Green Line, with 145,000 forecasted jobs to 35,600 forecasted residents in downtown Minneapolis, and 55,800 within a half a mile of the stations on each side. So this is a great opportunity for investments that we're going to see for decades.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any additional questions or comments? All right, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Jim. Next, we're on to business item, our final business item for the night, which is 2021-201 for Metro Transit uniforms. And we have Steve McLeod here.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber and council members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm Steve McLeod. I'm the acting director for bus operations for Metro Transit. And the item I have this afternoon is to introduce the business item 2021-201. And what we're doing is asking the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract number 21P063 with Galls LLC to supply uniform items for bus operators, rail operators, and other represented employees in the amount to not exceed $3,750,000 over a 5-year period. So the background for this is we require a new contract for supplying not just the operator uniforms, but also for supervisors to replace expiring contract. And in the collective bargaining agreements, there's an annual uniform allowance for bus rail operators and supervisors. Also, each new hired employee in those groups gets an initial issue. And then we take care of the smaller groups such as dispatchers, coordinators, rail maintenance, and supervisors. The process we used was on May 18th, we put out a request for proposals. And there were 5 plan holders. Proposals were due on June 15th of 2021. 2 proposals were received and evaluated for consideration for award. For the criteria, we looked at the proposer quality, proposer qualifications, the experience, the price, and the ability to meet current and future needs. The evaluation panel recommends Galls LLC as the proposer most advantageous to the council. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions from council members? Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you, Chair Barber. I just had a few questions. I was wondering if these uniforms are made in the United States and are they union made? My third question, what's the fabric? Is it organic or is it made from like polyester type fabrics? Thank you.
Chair Barber and council members, the uniforms are, unfortunately, there's not an easy answer. They are made up of, primarily we have the wool and cotton products, but there are a lot of the pullovers, our rayon, and some of the other materials. We try and use as much as we can for US made garments. The shirts are, an example is the shirts. That's a very large purchase for us. The cloth is made overseas, they ship it to the US, and it's cut and sewn in the US. So we make the best effort that we can for US products. And I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from council members?
Councilmember, Chair, I was just curious why there was no goal set for this, because there are a number of BIPOC businesses that are in the apparel side of things and do things similar to this.
Chair Barber and council members, this was reviewed by the Office of Equal Opportunity. There's no DB goal because there are no MCUB uniform providers. And also there are no subcontracting options in this contract.
Interesting. Okay. It seems like we've created as we've found out, there's often opportunities that we sort of, the way we structure contracts, we block out some of the BIPOC businesses. We've had that challenge with a few of our other contracts. So I'm just wanting to make sure that's not what we did here. Is there someone from OEO that can share that, or how did we go out and search for DBE people that could work on uniforms?
I see Elaine on the line, but I don't know, and I see Jody on the line, but I'm not sure that they could address your specific question.
Chair, council
Oh, I see
members, I
Matt.
can certainly address that. There are very few uniform suppliers that, well, one, provide uniforms. But in this particular situation with the magnitude of the uniforms that must be supplied for this contract, we could not find any MCOM suppliers that could meet the requirements. And as stated previously, it did not lend itself to subcontracting opportunity.
So there was no part of the uniform that somebody else could have done.
As I reviewed it, that it was my understanding.
I think, Councilmember Ferguson, did you have a follow-up first?
No, but I just, this is happening regularly, so I probably would not support this, so we can have a full vote at council on it and get more information.
Okay, Councilmember Sterner.
Yes, I was kind of wondering maybe in the future, and I'm either this one or in the future, like maybe if we break out the bids a little bit different, like so certain parts of the uniform, because sometimes you got hats, you got gloves, you got pants and shirts. There might be certain vendors that specialize in one area of the uniform or another. And I feel like maybe it's possible if we would break out the bid, there might be more opportunities for small businesses and more competitive bids in the future.
Councilmember Chambliss, I believe, is next.
Yeah, I think, looking for opportunities to create this bid so there's opportunities for subcontractors. I know that we do have subcontractors that do sewing and putting, those kind of things, uniforms together. So they may not provide, the materials, but certainly you could find a BIPOC business that could sew the uniform. So I'd like to get more information as well before I approve this.
All right, Councilmember Fredson.
As Chair, I'm wondering if you or staff would know if there's an urgency behind this. That's if it's a requirement to provide uniforms in a collective bargaining agreement by a certain date here. Otherwise, I'm wondering if we could just lay this over.
I'm going to defer maybe first to General Manager Koistra.
Madam Chair, I understood that there was some timing issues with this, and I would ask either Steve or Brian to respond to the timing demands on this. That's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Chair Barber, I can respond.
Yep.
Okay. Currently, the contract we have has been extended to the end of September of this year. And this is a contractual requirement for both ATU and TMSA employees.
Are we changing vendors, or are we just staying with the same vendor?
Madam Chair and council members, we are staying, Galls is our current provider of uniforms.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I feel like the timing issue comes up a lot. I think if we could get more lead time to review some of the bids, or maybe look at our timeline so that we have more time to review in case we do have to send something back, because, you know, it seems like 90% of the time, you know, there's a time constraint for review. So I'd like to build in some more time for that, but I still, you know, we got to do what we got to do. A lot can be done within a couple of months. So I would still like to give the staff some time to do a little bit more research.
So Councilmember Fredson.
It sounded like you were gonna offer a recommendation on our path forward here. So
We have, yeah. I'm trying to figure out what the best option is to do this. And so one option we could have is to table the item to our next meeting, which is August 9th. And then if we needed to move it faster, we can move it as a same week item to council to bring time in. What would the will of the committee be?
I'd like to make a motion to table the item.
Fredson here, second.
All right. Is there any other discussion? All right. Seeing and hearing none on the motion to table, Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin, Barber.
I'm sorry. Zarin, I'm sorry. I didn't hear yours.
Zarin's a nay.
A nay? I still had a hard time.
No.
Okay. All right. Go. Sorry, Becky.
Barber.
I'm going to go with aye. And so we will table this item to the August 9th meeting. So with that, that's the end of our business tonight. I would say items number 1 and number 5 go non-consent. So the budget amendment, obviously, and the Southwest LRT item, non-consent to the full council. Items 2, 3, and 4 can go on the consent agenda, and item 6 is tabled until August 9th. Does everyone agree with that? All right, very good. Well, then we finished up early, so everyone can go enjoy a nice summer evening, and we will see you in this week later. Sounds good. Have a good night, everyone. And the meeting's
Okay, good
adjourned.
night.
Bye-bye.